I am Dean Putnam, the Sales Engineering Manager from High Point Networks. We've had some great content this morning, and as a result of it, we're running a little bit behind, so we're going to have a little bit of an abbreviated expert panel today. And here come our experts right now. For those of you in the audience that have a question, please raise your hand. For those of you that are out there in the virtual world, you should have a little link to the side of your client that you're viewing it on. Please make sure you submit them. Again, we're running a little behind, so we may not be able to get to everything. If we can't, please ask your questions. We will follow up with you. We'll make sure that we get that going. So, with no further ado, and standing between you and lunch, let's get things kicked off here, and let's meet our panel. This is Shawn Mendel, Director of Professional Services. I have Brandon Conkins, Director of Managed Services. Dean Sheley, Senior Security Consultant. Lynn Soeth, Security Services Manager. Brian Beck, who's our Presales Engineer and Voice Architect. Mike Traylor, Network Engineer. And Chris Watson, Senior Systems Engineer. Our whole goal is to redefine a lot of the questions that we've already compiled that have come up through the year, might have been asked and answered in previous sessions, but we were trying to redefine it, and there's been some big changes over the past year. One of them is nothing short of us all kind of coming back to work after the pandemic. Let's start out with that. Brian Beck, I'm picking on you to start with. How has the mobile workforce changed the approach to communications?
Well, that's pretty simple. We've had to use technology to replace what used to be done just by walking into somebody's office or reaching over and tapping them on the shoulder to ask them a question. We've had to use technology to instantly ask somebody a question to get an answer back, or to collaborate by desktop sharing and things. I think that's evidenced by the success of Microsoft Teams that we've all heard about. Teams does do a phone system, but really what people wanted was that collaboration, the instant messaging, the desktop sharing that you couldn't do when you were all in the same room.
All right, so it sounds like our voice is going well. We've also got email and some other communications for you data guys. What are the benefits of moving my email to the cloud?
One of the biggest benefits that I always tell people is you're going to get a little bit more security. Now, some of that obviously has to be set up. You probably have some, stuff set up internally as well. I know some companies you have to VPN in order to get email. Those types of things. But with O365, with some of the conditional access and MFA, you're getting that extra layer of security up there. You're also, server outages on-prem, you're still getting those emails and stuff like that. If, God forbid, you get a compromise and everything gets encrypted, your email's still flowing, it's still in the cloud. Now, the other downside of that is if Microsoft data centers all blow up, and so does your email, but, that never happens.
Never.
Never. It's cloud, it always works.
Piggybacking right on that, Chris, I'm currently running hybrid Exchange. Can I get rid of my on-prem Exchange server?
I would love to say yes, but no. They were trying to get AD Connect to kind of take over some of the functions that the hybrid server still needs to do. And they didn't get there because the way we figured out that they weren't going to do it, or they're still behind, is used to be 2019 was not allowed to be a hybrid server. You would actually have to, do some of the stuff there. Well, now they have initially now just allowed the 2019 as a hybrid server, so you can, at least stay up to date with the newest version. So, I know some people have shut them off. You're probably going to have some issues coming down the road, when you turn them back on or need to get rid of them. I mean, the cleanup from that is going to be horrid. Just keep them on, keep them running, keep them patched, keep everything locked down to O365 only.
So it sounds like my voice and my email, I can send everybody home and I don't have anything else to worry about. There might be a few other applications out there, right? So I'll throw it out to the whole group. In a post-pandemic world, how do you protect your remote workforce? It's a big general, but we'll throw it out. Mike?
Well, you could stick with your old VPN, you know, your remote person, connect up to your network. You could start leveraging SASE, Secure Access Service Edge, to protect what you're accessing up in the cloud. There's ways of actually coming back to the business, accessing resources on-prem through cloud. You connect up through there. It's all protecting or preventing you from accessing things you shouldn't be. Zero trust, deal with all those discussions.
Zero. Yep. Anybody else on that? That was a big one.
Just adding to that, because the devices that are remote aren't necessarily behind their corporate firewall anymore, the endpoint solutions that are on those PCs that are maybe never come into the office becomes even more and more important.
Dean Sheley would remind me identity versus perimeter, right? So protect. All right, so let's jump into that security question. What are some of the biggest threats? We've had some very dynamic speakers this morning, from our keynote to even just the couple of fellows right before us. So, you know, what are the big threats that face us today, from political landscapes to just some of those bad actors out there, and what are the threats internal as well?
Threats actually come from everywhere. You're right. There's the big threats, there's the little threats, there's the script kiddies sitting in their basement. You are being scanned continuously all of the time. So always assume that the threats are coming at you. It really doesn't matter if they're a big threat, a little threat, a tiny threat, or Russia. They're still a threat.
Coming to get you. Doesn't matter how big your business is either, right? So this past year, a lot of us have been through some cyber insurance audits, or possibly just purchasing it. And there's been some new mandates. Let's run around to MFA, multi-factor authentication. Most of us are doing it. Let's redefine it. We're all kind of used to what it is now, but what's the end user experience when enabled for access to Microsoft 365? I'll just start with that one.
So there's a breakout this afternoon. I'm going to throw my thunder out there a little bit. That is actually going over some of the cyber insurance stuff. And the biggest thing is MFA. They want MFA on everything. And I'll go over, why they want that. And for your end user, I mean, I kind of said this in my earlier breakout, is, anyone middle-aged and older or younger is not going to have a problem with the Microsoft Authenticator app most of the time. They have, their bank apps, stuff like that. It's Betty, who's 65, still has a flip phone and been there 20 years, that just says, no, I'm not doing it. So there's always those things that you need to kind of work on, but for the most part, it's relatively simple to turn on, roll out, and push it out to groups, rather than just say, hey, everyone has to do it.
And there's a reason that insurance is starting to mandate MFA, folks, right? Because nobody understands risk better than casinos and insurance companies, right? I mean, there's a reason. They know the math. They know the statistics behind it. Shawn and I, and Lynn preaches this too, kind of what are the greatest risks out there. And we're going to talk about credentials, but man, that's where it's at right now. That's the reason that it's beginning to be on insurance policies, so.
And maybe you're going to cover it in your breakout today, Chris, but I love this when I saw this question. Can I implement MFA without using the user's personal phone device?
Yep, there's ways to do it. You can actually, again, I talk randomly or generically. Yes, there's always licensing and stuff like that. Some of it included, not free. I don't want to say free. Included, so we want to make sure on some of those. But, there's the Ubico keys, there's texting, which isn't what we'd normally like. But yes, there's lots of different ways that you can do it without the Authenticator app.
Let's stay on the Microsoft train. Microsoft now is disabling basic authentication in Microsoft 365. What's the impact of that?
There are a lot of legacy apps out there that are still, they can't handle modern auth. Whether they be just a company that started something up and sold a lot of its software, and they're just happy, you know, throwing out some patches here and there, and they're not really updating it. So you're going to have some issues, you know, connecting into O365. A lot of those also, you know, maybe some relays and stuff like that. That's why we kind of still say you need a hybrid server on-prem where you can relay some of those, you know, legacy stuff still to your on-prem Exchange server and let your on-prem Exchange server do some of that encrypted traffic up to O365 at that point.
So that reaches out a little bit more than just Office 365. Brian, there's some impact of phone systems with that going away as well. Is that correct?
Absolutely. For anybody that's doing voicemail to email, that would be affected, but also contact centers that are omni-channel contact centers and are maybe taking in emails from their customers through Exchange and then bringing it into the contact center to deliver it to an agent and sending those back out. Both of those, luckily, the vendors that we work with have updated their applications to support the modern OAuth 2 authentication.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit here while we're talking about authentication. Certainly wireless is one of those things. So I'm planning a wireless refresh and looking at Wi-Fi 6 or 6E. I almost said 6A from my cabling days there. What should I be thinking about?
Oh, definitely got to be thinking about how many people are going to be using it, how much coverage are you going to need. Do you have any legacy devices that only operate on 2.4 gigahertz? I mean, if you have that, well, you may not be able to go there. Maybe it's time to upgrade.
So I'm trying to block people that are in the office. I'm trying to block everything that's going on my Wi-Fi in my office. I'm trying to protect everybody outside. It's kind of overwhelming. We all know it, and we're trying to do more with less, and all of us are being challenged with it. So I'll challenge my security folks. What are the top things I can do to secure my environment? Where do I start? What's the easy button?
I always think from the networking side of things, make sure you're segmenting your network properly, making sure you're only allowing people to access what they should, going back to zero trust again. John, in customer service, should not have access to your database backups. I mean, just things like that, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. We've heard it already this morning. We've heard it up here already. Identity management is huge in that. And also, we heard it this morning, patching. Of a lot of the major breaches that we've assisted with in the last 18 months, unpatched systems were responsible for over half of those breaches. So that's critically important. So, I mean, there's no easy button at all, but you definitely, identity management, patching, and then configurations. So properly configured firewall, for example, and other things those are the three critical things that come to my mind first. Obviously, there's more than that, but those are the first three that we see within the breaches that we assist with that were problems.
You just helped segue where I was going. The properly configured firewall. You can have a $150,000 firewall, but if you don't know how to use it, how to secure it, how to stay on top of changes, we often see operations issues. You can have the best-in-class tools, but if you don't know how to use it, excuse me, it's a lot like a $3,000 treadmill that sits in your basement and you hang clothes on it, right? So certainly just be honest with yourself, know where you need help, and we're happy to help you in those areas.
You know, our keynote this morning kind of gave us a different way of looking at things, starting with let's identify the bad stuff. Let's start with the good stuff. Is there a reason why I need an incident response plan?
Absolutely. If you're going to have a bad day, you don't want to start making a plan on the bad day because then you're very reactionary. No one knows exactly where to go next. So get your planning done first ahead of time. Get yourself an incident response plan. Make sure that you have that printed off because if you are having a bad day, you potentially can't get to it electronically. Have one at home, have one at work. Make sure that you have all contact information in there, including your cyber insurance company, including your CEO, your board of directors, your legal team, all contact information in there, and keep it up to date. Review it at least annually, please.
And not just review it, run dry runs, practice it.
Testing
Test.
it. Tabletop exercises are an excellent way to test all of your processes.
And here's the inside baseball on this, guys, right? We're all friends here. We'll keep it real. If something goes south and you don't have a plan, the finger pointing starts really fast, right? Something goes south. You do have a plan, and especially if that plan is developed as a committee and it's communicated to the board and the C-level and things like that, then people are a lot more forgiving. And there isn't specific finger pointing because it was created by a committee. So it's kind of I'm not sure what the politically correct term for that would be, but it's in your best interest to have a plan.
There might not be a political. You know, we're all asked to do less with more. Some of you guys have lost staff out there and had a tough time backfilling. It's tough, and to also carry the burden that you're the one person in your organization that might be responsible for the liability that is your security. That's pretty daunting. We're here to help you with that. Brandon, I'm going to put you on the spot. You've probably got a couple of smart services that might be able to help these folks out. What are some of the ways that High Point can help supplement some of that?
Yeah, I mean, you've heard a few of them. SOC has a service, Arctic Wolf, that's giving you the full scope and full visibility with 24/7 MDR. Threat Locker, I gotta say, when I go to industry events, excuse me, it's really fun to see what's gonna be the thing people are talking about 2 to 3 to 4 years from now. I can tell you, this is not a sales pitch, but Threat Locker was what thousands of people were talking about. And I think their only drawback is we're about 2 years early. We are, I know a few of you in here are already leveraging that, but I just think where passwords started is not where passwords should be today. And just the means that people are authenticating in and all that is really, it deserves to be just picked up, shaken and emptied and restarted. So you might have more to say on that.
Yeah, and this is not, seriously, not a salesy thing. I will not bring out a specific product like Threat Locker. I won't do that. But passwords, right, were the control for a number of years, okay? Started to wobble. So what did they do? They added MFA to that. You put those two together, you know, and that's kind of a force multiplier, 1 + 1 = 3. We truly believe that the trend is going to be that you have your endpoint security platform, EDR, XDR, whatever you want to call it this hour, right? But maybe that gets a little wobbly. So you add this second thing to it, just like passwords and MFA, you're going to have endpoint and now endpoint zero trust. And that'll be that force multiplier. So yeah, I agree, Brandon.
Right on. So a lot of help coming from High Point. Getting back to that incident response plan, remember, we're here to help you out with that. This might be that very way that we get to engage the other folks in your company and kind of spread out that responsibility for security throughout everybody. So even if you're just doing it as an exercise, it might be worth doing. So, Lynn, I always ask you, you know, how far do I have to go when I'm done with security, right? I mean, I've done everything you told me I'm done, right?
You're never done.
Never?
Never done. Nope. Security is a cycle. You need a plan. If you're going to build a house, you have a plan. You get a dresser from IKEA. They give you a plan with some instructions. Get yourself a plan.
Then you throw those plans, right?
Pardon?
The IKEA ones, you throw though.
Yeah, you throw them out.
Yes.
And then you look for it in the garbage. But anyway, sorry.
Once you have that plan, spend your money wisely, plug the holes that you found in the plan. Then you're ready to start assessing. Vulnerability assessments, assessing your people, that could be a phishing campaign. Once you find those holes, you're going to plug those holes. You've got a plan, you've done an assessment, now you're going to test. That's your tabletop exercises, that's your targeted phishing campaigns, that's making sure that your online education for your users is really sticking. Once you've tested everything, you're going to find a few more holes. Plug those holes. Now you're back around to the security landscape has changed already, so we need to take a look at that plan again. Is it really meeting our needs at this time?
We're constantly redefining IT, right?
We are.
And like Lynn said, man, the assessments are so important. And here's the analogy that I use that I think will stick with you guys. What if your medical doctor gave you a bottle of pills before doing an assessment, right? What if an IT salesperson said, here it is, before really understanding what your needs are? So like Lynn is saying, man, you guys do a fantastic job at it. Have an assessment done to figure out what your high risk things are, what your priorities are, you know, biggest bang for the buck and stuff like that. And have an assessment, and then Lynn and team will help, you know, prescribe what aligns with your business initiatives. Yeah.
So, and with that whole security thing and everything else that's ongoing, to prove to Tom that I wasn't sleeping last night or this morning, it's that sharpening your axe. You're constantly going to go through and figure out what you're doing and how to do it.
So you didn't sleep last night, is that what you're saying? Attaboy, up all night. Hey, last question for everybody. Hey, with the supply chain issues, should I start ordering gear now if I got projects, or can I wait? Anything you want, anybody want to
How
weigh
bad
in
do you
on
want
that?
it?
Yeah.
I know we just saw some email chains going around. One account manager had heard the vendor will go nameless, but I think there was $1.3 billion in backlog that they had. And this particular account manager had ordered around, I think, 500 APs that had just come in, but it was 12 plus months ago that they had ordered it. So I guess to answer that, how bad do you need it, and how willing are you to wait?
And work with us. We've got options and alternatives. Maybe it's not the model you want, but we may have other ways to accommodate you. So let's just keep that dialogue going.